So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I think perhaps what I'd like to do, just maybe quickly, is ask you all to perhaps just spend a couple of minutes to introduce us to your businesses. Yeah. And the key message here is new operating models. So we've got traditional sourcing companies, but I am firmly of the opinion that we are about to see a great deal of disruption to the industry. And quite frankly, that disruption is going to come from a number of gentlemen and a number of the gentlemen sitting in front of you. So, Richard, why don't you kick off? Tell us a little bit about Export Trading Network, and then after that, I'm going to launch into lots of questions.
Okay. I'd like to introduce you to a new business model for the global B2B marketplace that will be coming on stream called the Export Trading Network. Prior to the early 1990s, I was involved with various businesses dealing with international trade. As the internet started to evolve, I foresaw the huge impact it would have on connecting buyers and sellers throughout the world. I watched as many global B2B marketplaces sprung up over the years. What's interesting is that the basic model of these marketplaces have not changed over time. Servicing all small, medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, globally through one standalone website is not effective. A one-size-fits-all solution cannot address the specific needs of SMEs in individual countries. It is time for the global B2B marketplace to be disruptive. The Export Trading Network differentiates itself from all competitors through an innovative business model that actually reflects the interaction and trading patterns of SMEs in the real world. Due to geography, language, culture, trade barriers, SMEs, for the most part, do not trade globally. They trade regionally between neighboring countries. The Export Trading Network platform is comprised of 220 websites, one to represent each and every country of the world. The Export Trading Network now has the flexibility of tailoring solutions in accordance to the specific needs of individual countries and regions. The websites can be translated into the local language, and a wealth of pertinent trade-related information will help demystify international trade for the local SMEs. Our domain names are the cornerstones of the new business model. They are the most memorable, intuitive, exact match keywords to represent a B2B marketplace for each country. They all follow a consistent naming convention: exportcountryname.com, exportchina.com, exportindia.com, exportamerica.com. You would just type into your browser exportcountryname.com and you get to one of our sites. I call it the 5-second rule. Now you don't have to go through any of the search engines to find one of our sites. No disrespect intended. Our domain names establish an immediate affinity, trust, and sense of national identity, not just with the SMEs within each country, but with all the stakeholders promoting global trade within each community. And who are these stakeholders? It's the local governments, the trade associations, the chambers of commerce, universities, trade journals and magazines, trade fairs, etc. This is where it becomes interesting. will be inclusive to this community at large, allowing them to not only participate, but to take ownership over much of the content. Having all the stakeholders on the same page, each country-specific marketplace will grow and evolve at its own pace to become the top-of-mind portal site supporting the entire community within each country. So what does that mean for the Export Trading Network? We will provide a higher level of service for SMEs globally to be ready to take on and accelerate the next wave of SMEs to join the global marketplace. And what does this mean for you? There'll be millions of new businesses emerging as export-ready for you to discover.
Thanks, Richard. And I've got a number of questions that I'm going to be firing to you a little in a short while.
Okay.
Thibault, my friend. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about May.com?
Sure.
And in fact, should we play that video?
Yep.
Should we play that video?
We should play a video.
We should play that video. Okay. Why don't we do a very quick video and let's perhaps get some ideas about May.com or Glamour Sales, as we also know it as. Okay. Good. Anything else to add? I mean,
No. First, I would like to thank the French Chamber of Commerce to having me as well today, because 5 years ago, when I was about to start this project, the first presentation I had was with the French Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. At that time, it was an idea, and 5 years later, we have a business. So, just to introduce myself, I've been in the region for 15 years. I worked in the corporate world before with L'Oréal, with Coach, and then I moved into entrepreneurships when I turned 40. And since then, I have been regularly invited by my friend Anson, who has been witnessing the progress of our company. And it's a business model which is very familiar to French people, because actually the French invented the flash sales concept with a company called Vente Privée. And then
Are you sure it wasn't the English that invented it?
Privatesales.com. But the business model is quite interesting because it's consignment-based, whereas most of the American competitors who are doing that in America are doing that on a purchase-based model, which is much more difficult.
Yeah.
And there are several very strong players also in China, including companies like VIP.com, which is very big and listed on the stock exchange. So it's actually a new business model which has been growing extremely fast in China,
right,
and which has replaced the Groupon type of business,
yeah,
which was more like this group buying business model.
And I think the interesting there, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the speed. pretty amazing. I mean, you literally, as you mentioned, came here 5 years ago, presented this new concept. Now you have an amazing office in Shanghai on Beijing Lu. You have 550 staff working across Shanghai and Tokyo as well. And just, I still can't believe how fast your business has grown.
In this business, you have no choice. Either you grow or you die. Especially in the Chinese market, where the pace and the competition and the intensity is extremely strong. But our business is also growing very fast in Japan, where we are growing also 70% last year, 100% this year. So what is interesting is also in mature markets, because Japan, as you know, the retail market is not as dynamic as in China. When you find a disruptive business model, it's possible also to gain traction and market share.
Okay, great. Thibault, I'm obviously going to come back. I've got lots of questions for you, but I'm going to turn my attention to Andy. How are you, Andy?
Doing good.
Now, I think everybody's heard of Google. Who hasn't heard of Google? Andy, obviously, we can talk about Google, but just before last week, you and I were having a conversation. I was in Japan. I was with the KPMG Global Technology team, and we were sitting down with the Google team and with your regional guys in Tokyo, and they were talking about this new digital economy, and they were talking about, and they made a point to say that everything revolves around the consumer, and not everything, not starting it in the business world, but really starting with the consumer. Can you perhaps share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is a trend that is already happening. We all know that the digital economy is very big. Everyone uses the internet. So let me share with you some statistics. If the internet were to count as a national economy, it is actually ahead, the world's top 5, ahead of Germany, and behind only the US, China, Japan, and India. So you can think about the size of the internet. And it is a driver of economic growth worldwide. If you look at the period from 2005 and 2010, it accounts for about 20% of the GDP growth during that period. So this is everyone can see that from this data, the internet is already very big, and the digital economy is flourishing. The gentlemen sitting beside me are very good examples of how the internet is enabling a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses to grow very fast and become successful. And to your question about how this evolves around consumers, one of the most important trends in the next few years about the digital economy is the mobile internet. And this is particularly true for this region. This is a mobile-first region. There is currently one mobile subscription for every person on this planet. And if you look at 2013, there are over 100 billion apps being downloaded on smartphones and mobile devices. And I say that digital economy now revolves around consumers because they are big winners in this mobile ecosystem, because there is tremendous amount of innovation and competition, whether you talk about devices, apps, or content. And let me also share with you another study by the Boston Consulting Group. They have looked at 13 countries around the world, including the US, China, India, and a few key countries from the European Union. And they find that the mobile internet's consumer surplus, meaning that the values that consumers perceive over and above what they pay for mobile devices, is about $3.5 trillion US. So there's a tremendous opportunity for businesses to capture all these values. And the digital economy is connected to consumers because they are big winners in this ecosystem.
Wow. That is significant. That is very significant. I've got lots more questions for you. But Richard, I'm going to come back to you now. You've been here this afternoon. You and I sat down last night and we were talking about traditional business. And I would say in the room today, there are a lot of traditional sourcing businesses here. How important is it that the people in this room develop the new thinking around sourcing and in building a new ecosystem, if you like? And, you know, how would you describe Export Trading Network? Are you the future app store for sourcing?
I intend for the Export Trading Network to be the best of breed as a global trading network. I don't envision that any one application can be the be-all or end-all for all companies. I think the best that I can hope for is that we can be a very important piece of the puzzle.
But are the people in this room, are they going to have to change the way they do things? Are they going to have to change the way they do their business?
We're all going to have to change the way we do business. We're going to have to be bold. We're going to have to, take one step back and try to reinvent ourselves quite often because change is in warp speed. And we're going to have to take a real holistic viewpoint of our companies and say, how is the change going to affect the entire company and organization?
Okay, good point. Thibault, I guess another question for you is, of course, you are, of course, a brilliant e-commerce company, e-commerce player today. But can you see a point in time when you're not just an e-commerce player? Earlier on today, I was giving examples of how manufacturers now are really starting to look at that end-to-end supply chain. The manufacturers are now actually viewing and looking at e-commerce. And they're actively going out there and looking to develop e-commerce strategies as a manufacturer. They're also looking at potentially building brands. Where do you go from here? As an e-commerce player, are you also going to move out into other areas of business?
Well, we are, of course, reacting to the environment. The environment is going mobile. Next year, we will transition from an omni-channel where we have PC, apps, HTML5 to a pure mobile environment. We're going to abandon the PC.
You're going to abandon. So how much business are you doing on the mobile now then?
It's about 65%, and it's growing 10% per half year. But the point is, behind this, what does it mean for us? It means that we have also to evolve our business model, and we have to adapt to what I call the social sharing economy. So we are going through a transformation even of our platforms, where before we were just pushing products to consumers, but we have now to integrate in this social sharing economy customers' contents and user-generated contents in order to leverage this decentralized business model where actually your fans, your customers can become your ambassadors. And because a new generation of millennium consumers are also very much into creating contents that they share, that they upload, giving them and every customer the opportunity to be a fashionista and to curate assortments and to share this information is really what we want to achieve. So we will see something. We're working on what we call a new product, which will be our new app. And the goal is really to transform our business into something which is adapted to the social sharing economy.
Okay, very interesting. So just whilst we're on the topic of smartphones, I guess the interesting thing for all of us, and we've worked in China for a number of years, but we have now seen this amazing rise of the smartphone. The mobile take-up, as we know in China, is incredibly high because they don't have the legacy issues that we have in the West. So why are consumers in China amongst the world's most active mobile shoppers? Is there, what's the reason?
I think my interpretation is because Chinese people love everything which is new, and you had this democratization of the smartphone with the arrival of Xiaomi and smartphones that are relatively approachable in terms of pricing. And then there is a social aspect. Chinese people love social networks. Actually, QQ was the first social network and the biggest 10, 15 years ago. And what people can do nowadays with smartphones in terms of sharing products, sharing their comments, also because of the lack of trust into authenticity, and therefore the fact that customers really trust their peers rather than what platforms or retailers have been offering. All this has been prompting, I think, very much the rise of mobile commerce, which represents already, for most of the players, more than 50% of the sales.
Mm-hmm. Andy?
If I may touch upon.
To add?
Yeah, I totally agree with Thibault's comments. I also want to touch upon the point made by the gentleman from S3 about open innovation ecosystem. I think that to a certain extent can explain why China's mobile economy is so innovative, everything is flourishing. I think it's because there is tremendous amount of competition at each layer of the ecosystem. If we talk about the OEMs, there are a lot of smartphone manufacturers, as Thibault has mentioned, like Xiaomi and Huawei. They are producing a lot of cheap devices, which enable the proliferation of smartphones to a lot of consumers. And then if you go up one layer, you also see a lot of businesses embracing these mobile opportunities to create applications on top of that infrastructure. And this is creating tremendous amount of business opportunities. If you look at the Singles Day in China, which is on the day of 11th of November, I think about over 1 trillion renminbi dollars worth of transactions has happened within the first hour of that day. So there's a lot of innovation, both in terms of the infrastructure and also the businesses. And then consumers embrace it because the whole ecosystem is there.
Wow. Yeah, quite unbelievable. Yeah. Singles Day. Just coming back to Google, one of my favorite quotes from Google, and in fact I heard it again in Tokyo, was, "Everything is connected to everything, and anything that isn't connected is obsolete." Mm-hmm. Which is kind of true now, right? Because I bought a digital camera some time ago, and I don't use it anymore because I use my Apple 6 Plus. Yeah. So 40% of internet users are now here in Asia. And can you share some more thoughts around Web 2.0? And what do you see? Because you've been studying, I know for a fact that Google have really been very focused on the consumer. Mm-hmm. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think this question goes back to the point that Thibault mentioned about the social sharing economy. I think nowadays consumers want more participation and engagement in their consumer experience. And this is also true in the context of the sourcing industry. Although I'm not an expert, but I can share with you a study that Google has conducted in Hong Kong together with Ipsos, the market research firm, last year. We surveyed a lot of SMEs in Hong Kong and classified them into different categories in terms of their digital capabilities and their engagement level, from low to high. And we found that companies that are more highly digitally engaged are better able to fully grasp the market opportunities, and they are more competitive. And there's one good example for the sourcing industry. We found that the internet enables these companies to improve their sourcing strategies and to increase their range of products and services. One important aspect is that these SMEs are equipped with interactive functions on their websites and their social networking pages. so that they can be closer to the consumers. And because they have these direct interactions with end users, they're able to gain a lot of first-hand experience with consumers and real-time feedback. So this enables these companies to gain more new ideas on products and services. And to go back to your point, this is all about Web 2.0, which is interactions, engagement, and this is particularly important in the age of the mobile internet, where everyone has a smartphone, and particularly in the younger generation.
Yeah, absolutely. The younger generation, just like you, Andy. not like me and Thibault and Richard. Richard, just coming back to another point you and I had a discussion about last night was, it links in very nicely about the SMEs. You know, I think one of the interesting things with Export Trading Network is the potential, right? The potential for the link into the SME marketplace, and how you can really, you know, kind of develop that, you know, that marketplace. Because you also gave, I think you mentioned to me last night about how, was it 300, there were only 300,000 US, that's right, there were only 300,000 SMEs in the US.
Exporting.
That were actually exporting,
That's
which
correct.
I found quite incredible.
And not only that, of the 300,000 that were exporting, the majority were exporting to one country only within NAFTA, either Canada or Mexico.
So that was only in NAFTA.
That's right, that's right. But along that theme, you know, throughout the world, there are still obviously millions of SMEs exporting. But every country in the world, part of their development agenda is trying to figure out how to get their SMEs to export. And that's what the getting within the community, every exportamerica.com site, exportfrance.com site, getting all the stakeholders involved, like I say, on the same page, all pushing together. And there's no one silver bullet, but everyone doing their part, all the trade organizations, all the magazines, just getting the information in the hands of the SMEs, that in the future, there'll be an onslaught. If they don't actually get there, the message to them will be, get export ready, in anticipation of changes in the global marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thibault, I'm just going to come back to you here, because you've spent a number of years working for the brands. You know, you've been in the brands. You were at L'Oreal, then you helped to set up Coach here in the region. And just perhaps thinking about the work that you've done with the brands, and the fact that you are now working with hundreds and hundreds of brands, what are some of the golden rules that perhaps executives here in our Made in Asia conference, what should people be thinking about now? Because the point is that the world's getting flatter. You know, that there's a lot of informed consumers out there in the marketplace.
I think that's exactly the point. If you look at what happened in the last 10 years, the biggest change has been the travelers, and the fact that now you have 100 million Chinese traveling, but also not only physically, they also travel digitally. And therefore, they have much more access to information. So it means that for brands, they have, when they are coming to Asia, to be true to their own positioning. In the past, brands were trying to tell a different story when they were entering Japan or entering China, because those were really hermetic countries. But nowadays, there are no more boundaries. And a brand which is coming, a new brand from the US or from France, has to be true to its values. Then, of course, the brand has to be relevant. Relevant because consumers are much more demanding. There is also much more local offer, which is getting more and more relevant itself. And then I would say that the brands have to build up their awareness and their image using modern ways, especially leveraging the very influential key opinion leaders rather than only working with traditional medias. In terms of distribution, it's a no-brainer nowadays that you have to right away have an omni-channel distribution, which is not only purely offline or purely online, but it's a combination of online, offline, and online to offline, or offline to online, which it's called O2O. And at the end of the day, one key point remains that it takes time to build brands. So you can't expect profit right around the corner, but any investment which is made is not only made for the country where you're investing, but it's also benefiting the global traveler, which is maybe not going to buy right away in Shanghai, but he might buy in Paris, London, or Tokyo.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. And I love the quote about the 100 million Chinese traveling, and they're also on that. That's not just physical, but they're also on that digital journey as well. Great. Very good. Andy, I'm going to, again, I'm a big fan of Google, aren't we all? But apart from the Chinese government. But one of the interesting things is, and I've got some good mates that are working at Google, and one of the interesting things is this whole idea of the 9 principles of innovation at Google. Can you share, perhaps, with everybody here those 9 principles of innovation?
Yeah. I don't think I have enough time to go over all the principles.
Okay,
but,
just give us a high-level view.
High level, yeah. Okay. So, of course, I think everyone has the impression that Google is an innovative company, and it is essential because the internet ecosystem is very competitive. I think a lot of people love us because we constantly create new products that have a big impact. So I think that is the key reason. We need to be innovative. It is a matter of survival.
You mean like Google Eyeglass?
That's my example. If I can give you like a very high-level description of what innovation means, I can share a quote from our CEO, Larry Page. Mm-hmm. He has this toothbrush test when he thinks about innovation. So is this something that you will use once or twice a day, and does it make your life better? So that means that when we think about innovation, we want the products or services to have a big impact, to improve your life. And it is also a product which you will use very frequently, once or twice a day, so that it can be scaled across a lot of users. And that is the power of the internet. And then I think one of the best examples within Google who embrace this spirit of innovation is Google X, which is one department focusing on what we call moonshot innovation,
right.
10 times innovation. Google Glass comes from this Google X department.
Has everyone heard of moonshot? Have you heard of that Google moonshot thinking? I see a couple of people nodding, a couple of people. Maybe you can tell people a little bit, elaborate a little bit on moonshot.
It's very simple. It basically means that it is not incremental innovation. Moonshot means 10x innovation, 10 times 10x better than the current offerings. It's not 10%, which is only incremental. And this goes back to the toothbrush test. We can only create big changes if we are ambitious enough. And this is the spirit of Google X. So Google Glass is one example of products coming out from that Google X department. We also have driverless car, and also Project Loon, which we put up balloons to the sky to provide connectivity to the next 3 billion people on this planet who don't have internet access yet. So this is the scale of thinking that we are talking about. in this area. So to go back to your questions, when we think about innovation, we want it to improve people's life, and we also want it to be scaled across a large number of users.
Okay. Thanks, Andy. And again, fascinating. I can't see. I don't have my glasses. Time's up. Time's up. Okay. Well, I guess we need to wrap up things. Richard, going to come back to you. Again, last night you and I were talking about, some of the interesting things in terms of the platforms, developing this ecosystem. Yeah. One of the interesting things I think that you did is back in Canada, I think it was the Canadian Retail
Canada,
the Management Association, they were having some real problems in developing that network, and you came along and did it for them.
Yes. Actually, what happened in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, in those years, every January, the journalists would write about how Canadians were buying online, not at the Canadian shopping sites, but at the American
US shopping sites.
The U.S. shopping sites. And they couldn't find any Canadian shopping sites. So I always had a keen interest in aggregating content, community, and commerce on the internet. And I said, well, I'm going to give it a kick at the can. And I started developing retailcanada.com. And I was getting the Canadian retailers into my directory, but it was very slow going. And what I did was I made a strategic partnership with the Retail Council of Canada, and I became their online directory. And within a year, we became the largest directory in Canada. And in 2005, in fact, something interesting happened in that AOL decided that from one day to the next that their content was going to be shared with everybody rather than just with their subscribers. So they had half a dozen retailers on board with them. I was in the right place at the right time. And, well, the rest is history there.
So you sold to AOL
That's
for
right.
millions and millions of dollars, didn't you?
I can't really say.
Okay,
that's confidential.
Okay, gentlemen, just in wrapping up very quickly, if you had to gaze at your crystal balls, imagine crystal balls are in front of you, imagine that we come back here next year, maybe, if Olivier and Oriane invite us back. Perhaps they will. But imagine we're here next year. What do you think we're going to be talking about at the next Made in Asia conference? And would you be more optimistic or less optimistic? Thibault?
I think we will be looking at our Apple Watches next year.
So Apple Watch, we're going to...
And we will,
not our Google Watches.
I don't know, maybe. There will be some transformation definitely in the watches. And maybe one subject we will talk about is still sustainability and the impact on the environment. This is one of the topics we are currently discussing in China because the e-commerce is great, but it's also creating a lot of additional pollution. And working on eco-friendly packaging, thinking about the transportation impact. I think all these topics are very important, and I'm sure it's not going to disappear.
Okay, great. Andy, what are we going to be talking about next year?
Next year is a long time in the internet industry.
I know.
But I think the mobile internet would still be what we are talking about because it is just at the beginning stage, and a lot of developing countries are still getting started in increasing their penetrations and getting more people online. So I think this will be an area that we'll have a bigger focus on.
Right. And are you confident? Are you optimistic?
Yeah.
Or pessimistic? Optimistic.
Optimistic, because a lot of competition in this area, which is
Right.
good for innovation and good for consumers in the end.
Right. And Richard, final view?
Well, I can't really make predictions, but you used the word optimistic. And something I'd like to share with everybody, I think, is that I am optimistic for the companies that can be bold, accept change, and constantly look to reinvent themselves. I think that's key.
Wow. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our distinguished panelists, Richard Meltzer,
Thank you very
Thibault Villet, Andy. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.